Before we dive in, let me set the record straight for my American viewers. I am not a globalist or a communist. There are plenty of videos explaining why Captain America was right in Civil War, and I understand those viewpoints because after all, I'm a firm believer in personal freedoms. And it's only natural because no one in their right minds will want to sign away their freedoms to the government. However, I'm reasonable enough to look to the other side's perspective and try to understand. While it's popular belief, and frankly mostly true, that governments seek nothing more than control and power, and as such, this equates to the motivations of the United Nations in Civil War, I believe this line of thought seeks not to entertain any rational arguments from the side of the governments. It's for that reason why today I'll challenge the conventional/mainstream perspective and argue in favor of the other side why the Sokovia Accords was a reasonable proposal, and by extension, why Captain America was wrong. An often overlooked aspect of the Civil War debate is the international perspective. To fully grasp its significance, we need to ask, who exactly are the members of the Avengers? Sounds like a ludicrous question, right? I mean, it's the Avengers, the Earth's mightiest heroes. Assemble, we are strong, forever everyone. To illustrate the relevance of this question, let's go ahead and break it down. Steve Rogers, or Captain America, is an American-born soldier who fought in World War II. Tony Stark, an American-born billionaire with a history as a weapons contractor, whose father was deeply tied to US intelligence. Bruce Banner, an American scientist working with the US military who can transform into a destructive green monster. Clint Barton, or Hawkeye, a US government agent who has carried out classified missions. James Rhodes, an American Air Force lieutenant colonel. Sam Wilson, an American soldier from the US Air Force's 58th School Rescue Squadron, and Scott Lang, an American engineer mentored by Hank Pym, who served SHIELD as a field agent. Do you see where I'm going with this? The pattern is very clear. The Avengers are predominantly American, with deep connections to US institutions like the military, private industry, and intelligence agencies. While they are often seen as Earth's mightiest heroes, their composition raises legitimate concerns on the global stage. To many countries, they don't just look like a group of independent heroes, but rather an extension of American power. Captain America's insistence that the Avengers should operate without oversight fails to address the implications of this reality, essentially advocating for a group of individuals associated with American interests to act globally without checks and balances. This is what people on Captain America's side fail to understand. By supporting him, they are implicitly saying that the Avengers, a group mostly comprised of people associated with US institutions like the military, private industry, and intelligence, have the right and should have the right to go into international borders and act in whatever way they choose. They are suggesting that other countries should not question or resist the idea of what is effectively an American aligned force intervening in their affairs. That is quite simply messed up. Captain America's stance brushes aside the legitimate concerns nations have about their sovereignty, especially when the group claiming to act for the greater good is made up of individuals tied to the world's most powerful military force. The Sokovia Accords, drafted by 177 countries as a collective response, are not just about bureaucratic red tape. They reflect a global consensus that seeks to create a framework for accountability in an era where superpowered beings can dramatically alter the fate of nations. The Accords aim to establish a cooperative system of oversight that addresses the risks posed by unregulated heroes acting on their own judgment, especially when that judgment is shaped by American values and interests. Captain America's dismissal of the Accords as a precursor to corruption ignores the need for such a governance structure and instead fosters a dangerous narrative that any attempt to regulate their activities is inherently unjust. This dismissal isn't based on any evidence of misuse. It's propaganda designed to maintain the status quo where powerful individuals act with impunity. For my American viewers who still disagree, consider this. Imagine if the Avengers were a group of Russians with ties to Russian institutions like the military, private sector, and intelligence. Would you reject the Accords and grant them the freedom to act however they wanted on American soil? Absolutely fucking not. And if you say yes, you are lying to yourself. This thought experiment reveals the underlying issue of American exceptionalism and moral superiority in the debate. It's seen as acceptable for an American-aligned group to act with unchecked authority around the world, But if that group were composed of Russians, the situation would be completely different. This double standard underscores the broader point. The issue isn't about regulating heroes. It's about the assumption that American power and judgment are above international consensus. Captain America's declaration that the safest hands are still our own encapsulates this flawed worldview. His belief that the Avengers can self-regulate without oversight is not just an argument for personal freedom, it's an assertion of American moral superiority, where the judgment of a predominantly American group is seen as sufficient to govern global affairs. It dismisses the voices of 177 countries calling for shared responsibility and respect for international sovereignty. In a world where the actions of superpowered individuals can have profound global consequences, his resistance to oversight isn't a principled stand for liberty. It's a dangerous, narrow-minded view that prioritizes American ideals over the legitimate concerns of the international community. By refusing to consider the broader implications of this stance, Captain America's position reflects a failure to engage with the realities of a connected world where accountability must extend beyond national borders. The Accords were an attempt to create a governance structure that respects the sovereignty of nations and balances the actions of powerful individuals with the collective will of the global community. Captain America's refusal to support them is not just about freedom, it's a refusal to acknowledge that without oversight, the Avengers risk becoming exactly what they claim to fight against: unchecked forces imposing their will on others. In Captain America: Civil War, the film doesn't adequately address how Captain America plans to ensure the Avengers remain accountable for their actions. While Steve Rogers passionately defends freedom and autonomy, he offers no practical mechanism for holding heroes responsible, particularly in a world where their extraordinary powers can have devastating, unintended consequences. His assertion that the safest hands are still our own becomes the crux of this dilemma, embodying his belief in the righteousness of the Avengers' intentions, yet failing to acknowledge the necessity for checks and balances. The phrase, "the safest hands are still our own," may resonate with the ideals of self-reliance and heroism, but it fundamentally overlooks the complexities of accountability. Captain America's stance assumes that the Avengers, as individuals with noble intentions, can govern themselves without external oversight, as if their moral compass is inherently superior to any system of regulation. However, this confidence borders on arrogance, ignoring that even well-intentioned people can be prone to errors or moral failings when left unchecked. History has repeatedly shown that power, even in the hands of the virtuous, can lead to abuse without safeguards of accountability. Consider the events of WandaVision, where Wanda Maximoff, a former Avenger who sided with Captain America in rejecting the Sokovia Accords, ends up enslaving an entire town, stripping its residents of their autonomy. Her unchecked power caused tremendous harm, yet she faced little to no consequences. And later on, she went on to slaughter the entire Kamar-Taj. Where is her accountability?
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
This scenario underscores the risks inherent in Captain America's position. It's not enough to oppose oversight without proposing a solution for how to handle abuses of power. He neglects to address how their actions should be kept in check to prevent collateral damage. By championing the idea that the safest hands are still our own, Captain America sets a dangerous precedent. He implies that the Avengers' moral authority is above the collective safeguards established by society, essentially placing their judgment above that of democratic institutions designed to protect the public. This perspective, while noble in its intentions, disregards the practical realities of global security, where even heroes must be held to account. In advocating for total autonomy, Captain America's stance neglects the very essence of responsible freedom, acknowledging that power, when left unchecked, can threaten the very liberties he seeks to protect. All of this leads me to my final critique about Captain America: Civil War as a film, which is, in my personal opinion, the freedom versus government debate in Captain America: Civil War is ultimately a superficial portrayal that reduces a complex and nuanced discussion to a simplistic binary: freedom is good, government is bad. While Captain America's ideals may resonate with themes of personal liberty, the film fails to meaningfully engage with the risks that come when freedom is not balanced by accountability. It misses an opportunity to explore the broader implications of unchecked liberty, including the dangers of corruption and abuse of power, and the critical need for a system of oversight. By not addressing these issues, the film undermines the depth of its own narrative and fails to challenge the audience to consider the responsibilities that come with freedom. This simplistic approach influences audience perceptions, leading many fans to embrace Captain America's stance without critically examining its consequences. The dialogue surrounding the film often reinforces the notion that Captain America is unequivocally right, sidelining any deeper examination of what absolute freedom entails. This creates a culture where freedom is idealized without clear understanding of the potential dangers of unrestrained autonomy, particularly on a global scale. Moreover, the film fails to engage with the complexities of international relations. It frames the Avengers' actions within the context of American ideals, ignoring the global ramifications of their interventions. The narrative glosses over legitimate concerns from other nations about the Avengers, essentially acting as an American military extension, as well as ethical dilemmas that arise from unilateral action. By not addressing how these freedoms could impact international stability, the movie reduces a multifaceted issue to a narrow preference for individual autonomy, while disregarding the reality that such a stance can have harmful consequences far beyond US borders. The elevation of freedom as the ultimate value in the film neglects historical precedents where unchecked power has led to tyranny and injustice. When freedom is idealized without a recognition of the need for governance structures to prevent its abuse, it fosters a one-dimensional view of morality that does not reflect the intricacies of real-world governance. This lack of depth turns a serious, nuanced debate into a superficial narrative where audiences are encouraged to cheer for liberty without considering the responsibilities and consequences that come with it. In the end, Captain America's Civil War offers a compelling yet flawed portrayal of freedom versus accountability, skimming over the deeper, more uncomfortable questions about unchecked power and global responsibility. By championing personal liberty while sidestepping the risks and moral complexities that come with it, the film presents an idealized version of heroism that doesn't hold up to real-world scrutiny. The simplistic freedom good, government bad narrative may be easy to rally behind, but it fails to address the dangerous consequences of allowing a few individuals to act without oversight on a global stage. At the end of the day, freedom isn't just about doing what you want, it's about being responsible for what you do. Well, that's just my opinion anyways.